What if I told you that the same three forces that brought down the mightiest empire in history are happening in America right now? Not the barbarian invasions you learned about in school. Not the corrupt emperors. But something far more subtle and far more dangerous. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Rome really fell. And why every American should be paying attention. Because history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. For over 1,000 years, Rome dominated the known world. At its height, it stretched from Britain to Iraq, controlling 65 million square kilometers and 65 million people. Then in just over a century, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. For centuries, historians blamed barbarians, corrupt emperors, or the rise of Christianity. But modern scholarship tells a different story. Recent research from 2025 reveals that climate change epidemics and economic collapse were the real culprits behind Rome's fall. Today, America faces eerily similar challenges. With over 800 military installations in 80 countries, a national debt of $37 trillion as of August 2025, and growing social divisions, the parallels are impossible to ignore. But here's the thing, understanding these patterns might just help us avoid Rome's fate. Let's start with the most overlooked factor in Rome's collapse: currency debasement. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. And when that trust broke, everything else followed. In 64 AD, under Emperor Nero, the Roman denarius contained 85% silver. By 265 AD, under Emperor Gallienus, it contained just 5% silver. That's a 94% reduction in real value over 200 years. Imagine your dollar losing 94% of its purchasing power. The result? Hyperinflation. In the 3rd century, prices in the Roman Empire increased by over 1,000%. Soldiers demanded payment in goods instead of coins. Trade collapsed. The middle class was wiped out. Now let's look at America. Since 1971, when the dollar was removed from the gold standard, it has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet has exploded from $900 billion in 2008 to over $7 trillion today. Just like Rome, America has responded to fiscal pressures by essentially printing money. Quantitative easing, stimulus packages, emergency lending. It's the same playbook, just with modern terminology. Here's the scary part. As of August 2025, America's national debt stands at $37 trillion. In 2024, for the first time in history, federal interest payments on this debt surpassed both Medicare spending and national defense spending. We're now spending more servicing our debt than defending our country. Rome debased its currency to fund its military and bureaucracy. America prints money to fund its military and social programs. The methods are different, but the underlying economics are identical. And history shows us where this leads. Rome's second fatal mistake was military overextension. At its peak, Rome defended a frontier stretching over 5,000 miles. From Hadrian's Wall in Britain to the Euphrates River in Iraq, Roman legions were spread impossibly thin. The problem wasn't just the length of the frontier. It was that enemies could choose when and where to attack, while Rome had to defend everywhere at once. Military historians call this the perimeter defense paradox. By the 4th century, military expenses consumed 75% of the Roman budget. Sound familiar? The army became so expensive that Rome couldn't afford to maintain it, but so necessary that they couldn't afford to reduce it. Today, America maintains over 800 military installations in 80 countries, more than any empire in history. From South Korea to Germany, from Japan to the Middle East, American forces are defending a global perimeter that makes Rome's frontiers look modest. America's defense budget for 2025 is capped at $895 billion, more than the next 10 countries combined. That's roughly 15% of total federal spending. And when you include veteran benefits, intelligence, and military-related spending, the real figure approaches 25%. But here's where it gets really concerning. Rome initially recruited barbarian federate allied tribes to help defend its borders because it couldn't afford enough legions. These allies eventually turned on Rome and carved up the empire for themselves. America increasingly relies on allied nations and proxy forces to maintain global stability. We train foreign militaries, provide weapons, and expect them to handle regional security. From Ukraine to Taiwan, from the Middle East to Africa, American strategy increasingly depends on others doing the fighting. History shows us that allies can become enemies overnight. Rome learned this the hard way when Visigoth King Alaric, once a Roman, sacked Rome itself in 410 AD. The question isn't whether America's allies will remain loyal. It's whether America can afford to maintain this system when it inevitably shifts. The third and perhaps most dangerous parallel is the growing disconnect between elites and ordinary citizens. In late Rome, this gap became a chasm that ultimately destroyed the empire from within. By the 4th century, Roman wealth concentration had reached extreme levels. A tiny aristocratic class controlled vast estates worked by slaves and tenant farmers, while the urban population depended on free grain distributions, the famous bread and circuses. In America today, wealth inequality has reached levels not seen since the Gilded Age. The top 1% controls over 40% of total wealth, while the bottom 50% owns less than 2%. This concentration rivals late Roman levels. Rome's political system became increasingly dysfunctional as elites pursued personal gain over public good. The Senate became irrelevant. Emperors bought loyalty through expensive public spectacles, and real governance ground to a halt. Sound familiar? American political polarization has reached historic levels. Congress struggles to pass basic budgets. Infrastructure crumbles while politicians focus on partisan battles. And trust in institutions hits record lows. Rome's tax system became increasingly extractive and arbitrary. Wealthy landowners used their influence to avoid taxes, forcing the burden onto the middle class. This created a vicious cycle. As the tax base shrank, rates increased, driving more people into poverty or tax avoidance. America faces similar challenges. Corporate tax avoidance, complex loopholes for the wealthy, and aggressive collection from middle-class taxpayers create the same destructive dynamics. When ordinary citizens see elites playing by different rules, social cohesion breaks down. In Rome, this elite disconnect eventually led to massive social upheavals. The Bacchae rebellions, barbarian settlements within Roman territory, and eventually the collapse of central authority. When people lose faith in their government's legitimacy, the empire becomes ungovernable. America today shows troubling signs of this same pattern. Declining trust in institutions, rising populist movements on both ends of the political spectrum, and increasing talk of political divorce or secession all echo Rome's final century. Now we come to perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of Rome's fall: the so-called barbarian invasions. Modern scholarship reveals these weren't sudden conquests, but gradual integrations that Rome initially welcomed and managed poorly. Starting in the 3rd century, Rome began settling entire barbarian tribes within its borders. The Visigoths in Gaul, Ostrogoths in Italy, Vandals in Africa. These weren't invasions, they were government policy. Rome needed soldiers and farmers to fill its depleted territories. These federati agreements seemed like win-win solutions. Barbarian tribes got land and Roman citizenship. Rome got military service and agricultural production. For decades it worked brilliantly. Many barbarians became exemplary Romans. Stilicho, half-Vandal, served as Rome's greatest general. Theodoric the Great, an Ostrogoth, ruled Italy more effectively than the last Roman emperors. Integration could work, but Rome made critical mistakes. They settled barbarians in large, cohesive groups rather than dispersing them. They allowed parallel legal systems rather than requiring adoption of Roman law. Most crucially, they failed to provide economic opportunities that justified loyalty to Rome. America today faces its own integration challenges. With over 46 million foreign-born residents, about 14% of the population, America has the largest immigrant population in the world, both in absolute numbers and as a percentage of developed nations. Like Rome, America struggles with questions of assimilation versus multiculturalism, legal integration versus parallel systems, and economic opportunity versus competition. The debates sound remarkably similar across the centuries. America has historically been more successful than Rome at integration, creating a common national identity from diverse backgrounds. But recent trends toward identity politics, linguistic fragmentation, and economic stratification echo Rome's later mistakes. The key lesson from Rome is that integration succeeds when newcomers have economic incentives to buy into the system, and fails when they see themselves as separate nations within the nation. When barbarian tribes realized they could take Roman land by force rather than earning it through service, the empire was finished. So what does this mean for America? Are we doomed to repeat Rome's fate? Or can we learn from history? The good news is that some empires have learned from Rome's mistakes. The Byzantine Empire lasted another 1,000 years after Western Rome fell. By maintaining sound currency, defensive rather than offensive military posture, and effective integration policies, Britain managed the transition from empire to modern nation-state. Japan rebuilt itself after World War II. Countries can change course when they recognize dangerous patterns early enough. America has several advantages Rome lacked. We have democratic institutions that can adapt to new challenges. We have a more diversified economy, less dependent on military conquest. Most importantly, we have Rome's example to learn from. The solutions aren't mysterious. Sound fiscal policy to avoid currency debasement. Strategic military posture focused on core interests rather than global dominance. Political reforms to reconnect elites with ordinary citizens. Integration policies that create unity rather than division. History shows that civilizations can change course, but only when they recognize problems early and act decisively. Rome's tragedy wasn't that collapse was inevitable. It's that Romans could see it coming but couldn't muster the political will to change course. The question isn't whether America faces Roman-style challenges. The parallels are undeniable. The question is whether America will learn from Rome's mistakes or repeat them. Rome wasn't destroyed by barbarians or bad emperors. It was destroyed by the same forces that build empires in the first place. The pursuit of security through expansion, prosperity through currency manipulation, and unity through elite management of diverse populations. America stands at a crossroads that Rome faced 1,600 years ago. We can learn from their mistakes and adapt our systems to new realities. Or we can continue down the same path that led to history's greatest empire crumbling into dust. The choice is ours. What do you think? Are these parallels real warnings we should heed? Or is America different enough to avoid Rome's fate? Let me know in the comments below. And if this video made you think, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into history's greatest lessons. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Let's make sure we're writing a different verse.